Welcome to Michigan Reimagined, presented by T.A. Forsberg and Wagoner Financial. And here's your host, Chris Buck.
Big fan of Allison Spooner. She's an author who writes emotional fiction with a hint of sarcasm. Here to share her journey as a writer and her new forthcoming book titled The Things We Cannot Change, a story about the ghosts created by addiction, is author Allison Spooner. Welcome to the show, Allison.
Hi, thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. Really fun topic. I'm so excited to have you on board here. I really value the creatives. This show is all about driving Michigan's vibrancy and economic sustainability and making Michigan cool and hip. And I really believe the arts and the creatives really add a big flavor to that palette. So thanks for being a part of the show.
Definitely.
So give me a quick summary on Allison Spooner. Kind of where are you from? Where'd you get educated? What was your path into becoming an author?
Oh, gosh. I am Michigan born and raised. Lived here and there, but mostly in Michigan. Grew up in a small towns, one of those rural towns we all know and love.
Okay.
I went to Grand Valley. Actually, for creative writing.
Nice. Okay.
It took a while to figure out how I was going to work that into my career beyond just writing for myself. So I've done a lot in the marketing writing space. I've done a lot in blogging, in writing for the community, promoting things in the Lansing community, and finally decided that I'd waited long enough and it was time to. I'd been writing my entire life. Since before I can remember, and kind of thought I was sitting and waiting for the perfect time or to be discovered or, one of those moments, but decided it was just time to do it.
Right on. Okay. So you mentioned that you've been a writer your whole life. When did you first identify that you did that differently than maybe the other kids, assuming you were a kid when it started? Yeah,
I was actually couldn't even write yet. I think one of my first recorded stories on paper was written by my mom because I couldn't actually write yet.
Wow.
So okay. She wrote it down for me while I dictated it. It was just talking about what I was doing during the day or whatever, but something about hitting my brother, but I don't know. And then I wrote like a book in second grade about visiting a story in second grade about visiting a haunted house. So I think I noticed I was doing it differently when I was doing it outside of school. When I was doing it in my free time, the other kids were like, oh, we've got to write something. And I'm like, yes, time to write, or time for silent reading, and the stuff none of the other kids really wanted to do.
Well, it's one of the things I do credit public education in. I've raised a couple of boys, and they inevitably would come back and say, I can't believe I've got to do poetry. This is so stupid. Or can't believe I've got to do this. I'm like, you need to understand that you don't know what you don't know. Mm-hmm. And so it's important that everybody get exposed to everything. And that not only tells you the things that you're excited and interested in about, it could be woodshop, it could be playing a musical instrument, it could be reading, but it also tells you what you don't want to do. Mm-hmm. And that's okay. And so you can, you'll have to put up with it for that semester or whatever. And then you can put it in the rearview mirror, but someone you really care about might really like the thing that you hate. And that's okay. And, so there's an education to be had there. So there's something to be said for, writing as a hobby and just journaling and blogging and doing it as kind of a career. But it seems like it's an additional step to say, I'm going to throw something out there and then market it and sell it and hope and make myself vulnerable and have the world read something that I've created. How did you do that? When did you know you wanted to do that? And was it as scary as I imagine it to be?
So I think because I've always loved reading and always loved stories, I always knew I wanted my book on the bookshelves. So I always knew that putting my writing out there would just be part of being a writer.
Okay.
To me, that those two things just went together. If you're a writer, everybody reads your writing. So it wasn't too big of a leap to decide that it would be okay to let people read my work, or because I was doing it for so long and because I'd been writing for so long, I'd let people read my work, whether in school or in writing groups for fun. My best friend and I actually both wrote a lot, so we would read each other's work. So letting people read my work was always kind of ingrained in what I was doing anyway, especially because I knew I wanted to be on the bookshelves.
Right. Okay.
I wanted my words to impact people the way that the words I read impacted me. I wanted people to be like, oh, I can't wait for her next book, or see it on the shelf and be really excited, or just keep thinking about a story when they put the book down the way that I kept thinking about, the stories I read. So that was always going to be part of it.
Got it. Okay, cool. So you came to terms with that early.
Yeah, pretty early.
Big running start. Okay, that's great. 'Cause again, as a non-creative, I would be nervous as heck to, this is my private little thing, and now I'm going to put it out there, and people are going to not like it, and then so I would imagine some of the listeners feel that way. But I guess if you're in that space and you have that kind of long running start, then you already popped that balloon a long time ago.
And I think that is pretty unique for me, at least. A lot of the writers that I interact with, either online or in real life, do have that kind of that nervousness about putting their work out there.
Right.
I just don't have that experience of having to overcome that.
Right.
But I definitely think some people do, and it's totally, totally understandable. I just luckily have not had to deal with that particular obstacle.
So what was your first published book, the first book that you put out there for consumption by the masses, people you don't know? And what was the basic story, and when did you do it, and how did it work out?
Yeah, so it actually ended up being a collection of flash fiction. So
Okay.
super short stories, all less or around 1,000 words is the definition of flash fiction, that 1,000-word mark.
Okay.
And it kind of came about because, I always knew I wanted to write. I knew I wanted to write a book, but that big book idea just wasn't coming. I was struggling to come up with an idea that would make it into a whole book. And I was kind of feeling like a failure because it'd been, I think I was in my 20s at this point, late 20s, and I hadn't published anything. I didn't have a book. I was like, am I even a writer? So I had a lot going on, and I discovered through events online and in the local community flash fiction that encouraged you to write shorter stories, to use prompts to get you to work into your stories. So it gave you ideas to get started. So I started doing that, and I really liked it. I was having a lot of fun with it, but I was still beating myself up about not having a book. And I looked and kind of realized I had all these stories under my belt. And the publishing world was changing at that time. It wasn't just you had to be traditionally published. Self-publishing was also making kind of its debut and becoming much more accessible. And so it was kind of one of those moments where I was like, why am I waiting on this? I have all these stories. People enjoyed them when I read them or shared them. So I said, I've always wanted to be a published author. I have these stories. They can be published. Let's do it.
And what did you call that?
The first one was Flash in the Dark, a collection of flash fiction.
Got it. Excellent. And is it still available?
It is still available, and now it has a little buddy, another collection called The Problem with Humans and Other Stories.
There's a lot of stories.
There are, and I know it's not long enough, but I do not have that kind of time.
Got it. Okay. So on the website, and it is the quote that I read in the intro, emotional fiction with a hint of sarcasm. Talk a little bit about why that's your voice, or what that actually means to you.
So I write a lot of emotional stories. I enjoy reading them too. I think that's how, in real life I can come off as kind of stoic or not super emotional, not overly emotional like a lot of writers or creatives can be, but I get it out all through my writing. I enjoy reading stories that will make me cry. And so that's where I express a lot of that. And so I enjoy writing books and getting feedback from readers like, oh my gosh, this made me cry, or this really made me feel this, or this. So writing emotional fiction is really important to me. And then, sarcasm is just part of who I am. And, if you've got such heavy topics, you definitely have to have something to help even it out. So I can't imagine, I'm sure I'll do it someday, but I can't imagine writing a character that doesn't have just that little bit of sarcastic, personality to them.
Makes sense. Makes sense. I want to tip the cap to my folks, to my friends over at the Forsberg Real Estate Company. When it comes to creating the best living and working environments for the community, no one does it better than my friends at the Forsberg Real Estate Company. Brent Forsberg and his team create vibrant, holistic communities that inspire growth and encourage belonging. Focused on building stronger connections for people, the Forsberg Project is always in tune with balancing relationships to create an optimum human experience. Since the 1950s, Forsberg has been enhancing the quality of the communities they serve by following the principles of regenerative growth and aligning the resources and tools available. Reach out to my friends at the Forsberg Real Estate Company by calling 517-349-9330 or check out their website at lansingrealestate.com. So you have a new book coming out. Talk about it. We're recording this as of September of 2024, and this is the month that goes live. Is that correct?
The book will be released on September 30th.
Got it. And what's it called and what's the nature behind it?
Yeah. So that is called The Things We Cannot Change, a story about the ghosts created by addiction. I will hold it up here for the folks that can see it.
Okay. Nice.
And it is actually a fictionalized version of my own experience growing up with and losing my father to alcoholism.
Wow. Okay. God, that's emotional.
Yeah, emotional fiction, but the main character.
But there's sarcasm in there.
There is some sarcasm. The main character is basically me. A lot of readers or writers will put themselves in the story with just kind of pieces of themselves here and there. But this one, since it is my own story, I just put it all out there. She's basically me. So there's definitely a little bit of sarcasm, a little bit of avoidance, a little bit of...
Yeah, right on. Okay. So that's so it makes sense to me that this is not your first book.
Yes.
That you cut your teeth on this a little bit more. And you mentioned the book will be released on September 30th. What does it take to release a book?
What does it take to release a book? A lot of patience.
Yeah.
It depends how you want to do it. I mean, I think no matter your route, it's going to take a lot of patience. I chose to go the self-publishing route.
Okay.
The traditional publishing route takes probably even more patience than I even have, which was part of the reason I didn't go that route. It can take years. I won't go into it too much, but the querying process, finding an agent, actually getting it published, that can take years and years. And when I was writing flash fiction, I was just creating it so quickly. And the idea of a story you can read in about 5 minutes, everything about what I was doing was like quick flash, like little pieces. And I just did not want to slow down to wait for the traditional publishing companies to come through or the agents to find me. So I just decided to self-publish, and it takes research. It takes a lot of Googling. It takes asking questions. It takes being willing to be your own marketer and putting yourself out there and talk about your work, which I know a lot of writers, don't love doing. But in this world, in this environment, if you do want to be a self-published author, you have to have a level of willingness to put yourself out there and talk about your work and tell people it's good. Right.
So telling people it's good. So you press releases, is there a release party? Is there, and then how ultimately can people buy the book?
Yeah, so this one I'm going all out. There are press releases going out. I'm, doing a lot of personal outreach. There is a release party on September 29th. So the book comes out September 30th. The party is September 29th. It was very important to me to get this out in September. September is National Recovery Month.
Okay.
Given the subject matter of the book, I wanted to just get it out during a month meant to highlight the recovery journey for people and recovery resources. And the launch party will be a open mic style.
Okay.
So music and creativity plays a large part in the book. My dad was a musician. He had a lot of music and lyrics, and I have a lot of those journals with his writing in them. My brother plays music. I do not have a musical bone in my body, but he has that. Luckily, I have the writing. We have my dad's writing, so we've combined a lot of our skills to create some performance pieces that we'll be performing at the launch party. There will be QR codes linking to those performances in the book. So it's kind of almost like a multimedia reading experience. And so then there'll be an open mic portion where others can get up and share their own either pieces around addiction or just their journeys or anything they want to say or share about theirs or someone else's recovery journey.
You get into it as deeply as you want to, but it seems like this was cathartic and kind of a story that you probably needed to tell. Has this been something you've had on your queue to put out there for a period of time, and this is just the right time to do it?
Yeah. So I always say it was the book I knew I would always write. Well, since 15 when he passed, having, always wanting to write, I knew that I would probably get this out there sooner or later. I knew people need it. I started writing shorter pieces about our story and about our journey and performing them at local open mics and events and things like that. And they really resonated with people. I would always have people coming up to me, oh my gosh, I went through this with my dad or my mom or my friend. And I could really relate to everything you're saying. So I knew there was a space for it. People write a lot about addiction in one way or another, but I think the things we never want to write about, like our own guilt or our relief that maybe that person is no longer in our lives, I think those are really hard things to face.
Yep.
And those are things that took me a long time, probably like 20 years to face. So I want people to know that too. This took me probably 20 years to write. I didn't go through the experience, turn around and write about it. It took me 20 years. I probably wrote the first piece about it in college and then just kept writing about it in short bursts here and there. And finally, after getting my first novel out, The Lost Girl in Everland Story, I had that under my belt, and I had the experience and was finally ready to get this one out. Right
on. Well, good for you. I'd like to thank another one of our sponsors, Michigan Rise. This episode is brought to you by the Michigan Rise Pre-Seed Fund, providing early stage funding to Michigan-based startups. Since 2020, Michigan Rise has helped high-tech, high-growth startup companies achieve commercial and technical milestones through capital formation strategies, talent development, and customer acquisition tactics. With financing options for every stage of the entrepreneurial journey, Michigan Rise significantly increases the impact of new ideas and research. Visit MichiganRise.com to discover how the Michigan Rise Fund can help fuel your startup's growth. Michigan Rise is supported by the Michigan Economic Development Corporation and the Michigan State University Research Foundation. Well, thanks for sharing such a tender, an emotional ridden story. So you talked about your release party, and it sounds like there's a really great community that is in this space. Do you find that Lansing and Mid-Michigan in general, or maybe the world, has a collaborative ecosystem of writers that support each other, or do you feel kind of alone in your endeavor and your friends just come out to help you out? Oh, no, there's definitely a community in Lansing. It's kind of ridiculous how many talented people there are in Lansing that the world may never hear about. And maybe that's not what they want. And, that's not their journey, but just being involved in open mics and writing groups and things like that, I've gotten to see just how many talented people there are. There's also a ton of writers out there who are very supportive and just need support. So I put on a lot of events or groups here and there just to gather any writers that want to. I do like a monthly writing group at Hooked, the coffee shop bookstore here in town, and I do a writer's happy hour. But before that, many years ago, I was, part of a writer's group, and we put on a writing conference, and there's Fiction 440, and there's so many, I'm not going to be able to list them all. So many writing events and so many people in the writing community, and everybody is really, really supportive. And of course, there's the online community of writers that is just insane. But well, you just kind of answered my next question, and that is, what advice would you give to someone who's maybe listening to this episode saying, I've been writing all this stuff and I've got notebooks filled with stuff and drafts of things, but I just never really broken through or had the confidence, and I need a tribe to help encourage me to refine what I've already done and actually get out there. You've rattled off a couple of different organizations and clubs or events that people can get involved with, but how about your personal information? I mean, can we get, is there a website? I mean, how do you buy the book? What's your website? How can they follow you on social and maybe even message you saying, I'm inspired. How do I get to be part of these organizations? Yeah. All the important information that I always forget to give. You can find the books starting September 30th on Amazon, through Barnes & Noble, and of course, go to your local bookstores. It may not be on their shelves, but they will be able to order it if you request it. I am on socials, all of them. Basically, if you Google me, you will find me everywhere. Allison with 2 L's. Allison with 2 L's. Yeah. Spooner. Just like it sounds, nothing complicated. And I do a lot of writing and self-publishing advice on TikTok. I try to do it through my newsletter, my website. I have a website, AllisonSpoonerWriter.com. There is a contact form on there. I'm always willing to talk writing. Feel free to reach out to me. I do my best to respond. You can find me everywhere, and I try to post on Facebook all the writing things I am doing as well. Fantastic. You're not hard to find.
I am not hard to find.
And we appreciate that. I really appreciate you telling your story. Is there anything that I haven't asked that you want to relay to our audience, or have we covered the bases?
Real quickly, I guess just the basic plot of The Things We Cannot Change is the main character, a year after the death of her father to alcoholism, she comes face to face with his ghost and is now forced to face all the things all the thoughts and feelings that she's been running from and trying to bury in the form of a literal ghost.
Fantastic. I'm excited. I will get a copy, I promise you, and I will be very happy to read that. My wife as well. Well, we've been talking to Allison Spooner, the author of The Things We Cannot Change, a story about ghosts created by addiction. AllisonSpoonerWriter.com. Mm-hmm. And we appreciate you joining me here today.
Thank you so much.
And I just want to thank all of our sponsors one last time: Forsberg Real Estate, Wagoner Financial, Triterra Environmental, Good Marketing, Keller Williams Advantage and Team, Michigan Rise, and the attorneys at Foster Swift. All fantastic people. If you found this show as a one-off, I remind you to like and subscribe to Michigan Reimagined pretty much anywhere you find your podcasts, including YouTube and Facebook. This is Chris Buck. Thanks for listening to Michigan Reimagined.